This meeting won't take up too much of your time, but I hope that you can find it educational since a lot of you are in the music, you know, business. So first, let's introduce our organization, LHOF. So ever since 2017, we've been making efforts to better the lives of children in rural China and help American youth increase their awareness and understanding of different economies and cultures around the globe. And the Friday Talk series is one part of LHOF's local outreach program. And we launched it hoping to encourage American youth and our youth to exercise their social responsibility and help improve the local community. And today, our guest speaker will be Will Penn. I won't say anything else. I'll let you take the stage, Will.
All right, thank you, Jamin. Hello, everybody. Like Jamin said, my name is Will Penn. Um, yeah, I've been playing bass for 7 years. I am an alumni of the Alexander W. Dreyfoos School of the Arts, which is the same school. That's how we know each other. We went to high school together. And right now, I'm an incoming sophomore at the Conservatory of Music at Lynn University, and I study under Professor Tim Cobb. Before I go any further, I just want to say that I do have a designated Q&A section at the end of the presentation. And so if you guys just want to hold your questions until then, that would be great. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get started. So what is a conservatory and how do I get into one? So a conservatory is basically a college for the study of classical music or other performing arts. So it doesn't necessarily have to be music. There's also conservatories for theater and for dance, for visual art, etc. And so typically you would get into one of these conservatories via an audition. And so really quickly, the audition process is typically you go to the school and they would have a list, and that list it's going to vary from school to school, and it's also going to vary from different instruments. So for me, I play the bass, so I have for my Lynn audition there is one excerpt I had to play that was required. I believe that was the Beethoven Symphony Number 5, Movement 3. Um, yeah, and then I also had to play two excerpts of my choice. I had to play a scale, and I had to play an etude. For other, like I said before, it's going to vary from instrument to instrument, from professor to professor, from school to school. However, what's cool about it is oftentimes the audition lists will actually overlap with each other. So if you're applying to different schools, you don't have to prepare like a bunch of different pieces and scales and etudes for a bunch of different schools. You can just practice a couple and then just use what you know, and then just use them for your other auditions. So the actual application process. So you'll apply via the Common App website. Certain schools, especially if they're like private schools, you would need to actually no, just general. If there's a music, like a college of music within a school, they will have you fill out a secondary application. So you would fill out the Common App, and then after the Common App, you would fill out a secondary application, and then which most likely is just going to be your pre-screening video, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So yeah, and if you're applying to like a private conservatory, say like New England or like Cincinnati or something that's not like public, it might not be even on the Common App website. And so where you would find that information would actually be on the website of the conservatory itself. And so from there, it should give you step by step, it'll have its own proprietary application, and you would do everything from there, a whole separate login, whole separate process. So the pre-screening video. So the pre-screening video is it's like a short sample of your playing, and that's kind of to gauge it's to help the professors and the faculty know kind of like where you're at. And so typically it's very short. It's no more than cumulatively like 10 minutes at most. And like I said before, like similar to the actual auditions, it can vary per school. So for instance, one of my you know pre-screenings was just like a scale, an etude, an excerpt, and then that was it. It's just three things. Like I said before, for if you play like a more common instrument, for instance, like a violin or a piano, there's a lot, you have access to a lot more repertoire, so they might ask for a little bit more. But even still, your pre-screening video shouldn't, or videos shouldn't add up to more than like 10-15 minutes at most. And so after that, then you'll get invited to come to so the pre-screening is separate from the actual audition. So once they look at your pre-screening video, they will then compare you to however many other people. It's almost like prelims, yeah, like preliminaries. So they will basically compare you to the rest of the pool that is applying, and then they'll narrow it down to a couple people, and then they invite those people to audition to the school, and then you do the actual full audition, one take, all in one go. So what does the day in the life as a conservatory student look like? So it's gonna, obviously it's not gonna be the same thing every single day. At least for me at Lynn, we utilize what's called block scheduling. And so what that means is, instead of taking maybe like 6 to 7 different classes over the course of like an 8-week semester, we have certain classes that we take year round, but then there's also other classes that we only take in what we call 4-week blocks, hence the name block scheduling. So for instance, I'll have I take piano year round. So I'll have piano as my class, and then I'll have my ear training as another class. And then I'll have like a what we call the dialogue classes, which would be the actual block classes. And then that might be like an academic, usually like a basic like English class or something like that. But yeah, it's also awesome because I get to focus on my craft a little bit more. So I don't have to focus on 6 different classes at the same time. I can just focus on maybe like 2 or 3, and then I have more time to focus on music and whatnot. And so ideally, I would have classes typically 2.5 hours, maybe 145 minimum. And then after that, after class, before or after class, I try to practice for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then I bet some of you are kind of like looking at me like, 1.5 to 2 hours. That's not a lot of practice time. And I'll get into that when I go into my practice tips, because there is a reason for that. And so what's awesome about going to any given music school, there's going to be practice rooms. So there'll be areas, typically these practice rooms will have, pianos and nice insulated walls. So you can't really, it can limit the amount of noise being exposed to you as possible. And so you're really able to, hone into what you're doing and focus. And yeah, just really nice overall. If you have access to practice rooms, use them. They're a lifesaver. But if not, I just practice at home. No big deal. And so when I get home, usually if I haven't practiced yet, if I've already practiced, I'll go play some basketball, or I'll hop on Discord and play some games and chill with my friends. Or if you're like me and Jamin, you'll be up until 2 a.m. grinding Minecraft. But yeah, it's he's giving me a thumbs up. But it's very, very important that you find a hobby outside of music, and not just music, but just like anything really. If you want to be a doctor, don't focus on your medical studies, although that's important. Have time to, allocate time to do other important things, have time to spend with your friends, have time to, play sports, have time to play video games, whatever. Because if you don't, then I hate to say this, but you're not going to have a life. and I'm being dead serious. Because it can be very time consuming, and it can be very emotionally and mentally draining as well. So too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. So it's very important that you find other hobbies outside of your main kind of study. So practice tips. So you want to have a schedule. For me, I have it written down on like my notes section on my iPad. Some people have it written down on their phone. Some people have like a practice journal, and they'll kind of journal as they are practicing. And so this is not going to be like a objective, like this is what you need to do. This is more kind of like what I do, and this is what works for me. And then you can kind of just so you can see, and then you can adjust kind of from there what you think is best for you. But for me, I like to start with the basics. So um, the basics would consist of scales and technique books, method books, etc. I think I have one somewhere, maybe not, but yes, but yeah, I'll have like my method books, and it'll have like fundamental stuff like working on hand positions, different scales, etudes, etc. And then after that, I would I would go into my excerpts. And then so being under quarantine, for the year, we didn't really have orchestra. So what we had was different assignments for orchestra class. And basically those assignments were excerpt assignments. And what we would do is we would find lists, or the director rather, he would find different audition lists for each instrument. And then he would assign us maybe 5 to 7 different excerpts from that list. And then we would have to record them and then submit to him for a grade. And so as of for this year, that's what I'm practicing in terms of excerpts. But generally speaking, I'll be practicing whatever the tough spots are in whatever symphony or whatever pieces that I'm playing in that given time. And then after that, I work on solo repertoire. So that's going to be my Bach, that's going to be my Kusevitsky, my Bottesini, all those bass concertos and stuff like that. If you're a violinist, you're probably going to be, playing your Kreutzer, or your again, probably some Bach as well. And like I said, it's it's going to be different for everybody. Just do what works for you. And so long practice does not equal effective practice. And so I'm sure all of you have heard the phrase "practice makes perfect." Bull crap. Practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And so what I mean by that is, let's say this. Say you're studying for a test, and let's say that you are studying for 8 hours every single day, a week prior to the test, right? But you're not focused. You're studying, you have your books out and everything, but you're constantly on your phone, you're checking your Snapchat, you're on the Reddit servers, you're on your Discord servers, whatever, but you're not really studying. But then say, for instance, instead of studying 8 hours every single day for a week, maybe you only study for maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 days. You might study maybe like a week before, and then maybe a couple days before, and then maybe the day of. So you're studying 3 times a week for only an hour and a half, but you're zoomed in, you're focused, you're in the zone. You have your phone put away, you have no distractions, and you're just you're zoomed in. Out of those 2 people, who do you think is going to have better results? And it's going to be the person with the more who's focused and who's zoomed in. And so a lot of times what happens is these people, they'll practice, and even people that I know and that I'm close to and that I do life on a daily basis with, they'll be practicing 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. And if you can handle it, by all means do that. But what I see that tends to happen is that especially with young people, passionate, there's nothing wrong with being passionate. But what I see happens is that they'll practice, and they may be good for like the first 3 hours, and then 4 hours goes, and then they start to get tired, and then they're fatigued physically and mentally, because it is a strain. It is very much a strain. And so they start to slack off, and they're like, I might not do this fingering my teacher told me to, or I'm not going to work on the hard stuff today. I'm just going to do the easy stuff. And then what happens is you have unproductive practice time, and then which is actually very dangerous, because it can actually make you worse, and it can actually just be a general waste of time. So instead, what I like to do is I try to limit myself. I try not to do more than 3 hours in a given session. That's just, again, it might be different for you. Your limit might be 4 hours, five, six, maybe. But for me personally, I can't really go more than like 3 hours without a break. So ideally what I do, um, if I can, what I will do is I'll have maybe an hour and a half session in the morning, and then I'll have like another hour and a half session in the afternoon. So I have the whole day to, play basketball, hang out with my friends, whatever. And then I just come back. So I'm more productive that way. And honestly, it works out really, really well. I find that practicing with more intent, smaller, smarter practice produces better results. And also know when to stop and or at least take a break. Um, Sometimes you're just not going to feel it. It's okay. It's human. It's okay to not want to do things sometime, and not because they're hard, but because you're fatigued. And if maybe you're practicing, you're only an hour in, and then you start to mess up a lot, and you start to doubt yourself. At that point, honestly, just stop and just either save it for later that day, or just wait till the next day and look over it again, um, because that can also entice um, bad practice habits, and therefore bad habits in general when you play. So it's very important that you are limiting yourself, that you know your limits, and that you know when to stop. So key differences between middle slash high school orchestra and like a music school, like conservatory style orchestra. So in like a public school orchestra, there can be lots of talented musicians. I know firsthand. I went to a performing arts school which required everybody to audition. So we know that everybody has the skills and the capabilities of being great, but they might not want to be musicians. Like I know many awesome, like my best friend John. He also went to Dreyfoos. He plays the French horn, and he he was really good at French horn. He would play principal horn at the Dreyfus Philharmonic. He would get all the horn solos and whatnot. And then he actually got in. He attends University of Miami. Went to the Frost School of Music. And he finished his first year, and then he was doing performance, but then he realized he has a big passion for medicine, and so now he's doing a pre-med. So some people, they may be really talented on their instrument, but they might not want to be musicians for several reasons. They might want to go a different career path, or sometimes what's even worse is sometimes their parents may even force them, or they're kind of pressured to play. And so it's not only bad for the student, but then it's also bad for the rest of the orchestra, because there are some students that do actually care and that do want to you know continue their musical studies. But then when they're in high school, they're kind of limited by how far they can go or how far the group is, because you have kids that just don't have the passion for it. And so what tends to happen is that you'll have half the kids, and I'm sure Jamin can attest to this. You'll have like half the kids will want to they'll have they're practicing every day. They're practicing all the music, super dedicated. They're going to all those music summer festivals, and then you have the other half, which is like they practice once every like 3 months. You know what I mean? And then it brings everybody else down. So, however, at a music school or conservatory, everybody wants to be a musician. Everybody's in the music field, not necessarily a performer. That can be a teacher. That might be a degree in theory or a degree in conducting, and we'll get into some of those different paths later. But what's super awesome is that everybody loves music and everybody wants to do it, or wants to at least incorporate it into their future in some way. And so they're all pushing each other to get better. And that's what I love about not just Lynn, but just the musical community in general. Especially now with technology like Zoom, we're able to have Zoom lessons and Zoom masterclasses. There's a whole, for me, like I said, I play the bass. We have a whole Discord server for like a lot of like all the young like bassists like in America, and there's like over like 100 members in the server, and it's such a like a great community to be in. And so being in an environment where other people share the same craft as you is very reassuring, and it's just an awesome feeling to have. So yeah, available career paths. So what exactly can you do with a degree in music? I know for me and for many other musicians, maybe even some of you, you guys are pursuing, or some of you guys at least want to pursue a degree in music. But maybe some of your friends or even family members sometimes are kind of like, well, I mean, get a real job. What do you really want to do? So, but what a lot of people don't realize is that there's actually a lot of different career paths you can take. So there's you could be a performer, which that's kind of the path I'm kind of leaning towards. So my degree is music performance, and so that degree is preparing me most for the performing career path. And so what that'll entail is that it'll be full-time position with an orchestra. If it's like a big orchestra, say like Chicago Symphony or LA Philharmonic, New York Philharmonic, any of those big ones, if you get into one of those, you're basically set for the rest of your life. Because these are literally lifelong positions. Like people don't retire until like they're like 80. It's crazy. But yeah, and then it'll come with a contract, and over time, just like any job, you'll get raises and whatnot, and you kind of work your way up. And then there's a freelancer. So just like any other kind of freelance work, it's not a full-time thing, it's more part-time. But what's awesome about freelancing is that you have a whole lot more freedom. You're not constrained to a contract, or if you are constrained to a contract, it's usually like short term for a couple months. And so you might have a part-time position with an orchestra, or you take like local gigs. So when it comes to freelancing, that's kind of what I'm trying to do right now, as slowly things are starting to open back up, at least here in Florida. Trying to look in some of the local orchestras, see what gigs I can do. Or I know oftentimes churches will have, choruses and paid orchestras as part of like their worship services. And so that is another option that you can do. And then there's also, you could be a teacher or an educator. So this one is really, really cool because you get to influence kind of like the next generation. So you could be a private teacher. So almost like, it's kind of like basically like a freelance, like you can, and just like in general freelancing, you don't have to do like performing. You can perform and you can teach lessons on the side and do your own thing and have you're your own boss as a freelancer. But specifically as a teacher, you can be like a strict private teacher where you're not, you don't have a contract with any kind of school or university or whatever. It's just you offering a service to anybody who wants to learn. Or you can have a contract with either a public school, a university, or a conservatory, and you'll have like a paid salary, and you'll have your own set of students that attend that school. And then composers. So the work of composers, very, very, very important, because they write music not just for orchestras. Orchestras will have what we call composers in residence, where these people are literally paid by orchestras to make music that will be debuted by said orchestra. So that's actually a really awesome thing. Not every single orchestra has one. That's more of like a more mainstream in the bigger orchestras. But that is something you can do. But then there's also movies. There's video games, commercials, apps. Even if it's something as like a small jingle, and even like when you say, for instance, Discord. When you get a call on Discord, that's a song. That's a little jingle that somebody wrote that, somebody composed that. And so just imagine a life where, movies, there's no music in the movies. It's just talking all the time. It'll be kind of weird. Same thing with, video games and stuff. So it's just kind of, it just shows how much music really is important. And also music director and slash conductor. So conductor is in charge of the orchestra's rehearsal schedules and the repertoire list. So that's also another like career path I'm kind of looking into. So after I get my performance degree, and see what's awesome about music is that you can kind of like mix and match. And so say because they all have like the same curriculum, you still got to take your basic piano classes, you still got to take your theory, your ear training. The only thing that's different is more just more focused. Say for instance, if you're a performance major, you're going to have classes. For instance, your lessons are going to be like your classes. But say if you're getting a conducting degree, your conducting lessons are going to be your part of your class. And then, but they'll have like the same kind of preliminary, like I said, piano, theory, ear training, etc. So with that, once you become a conductor, what's really awesome is that you'll have a say into what the orchestra looks like. And so a lot of times these orchestras, they won't say conductor, they'll say music director. It's the same thing, but I prefer actually music director because you have a lot more of, of authority in the orchestra. You can kind of shape it in a way, the way you want to. So say for instance, if you want to play more, if you want to have an all Beethoven series that'll last a couple of months, you can have an all Beethoven repertoire list. Or if you want to have a all Tchaikovsky list, you can have an all Tchaikovsky. Or if you want to have an all music composed by minorities, you can do that as a music director. And so there's lots of different things you can do with that. And also just kind of going back, into what I mentioned earlier about like you can kind of mix and match stuff. At least for me, my kind of goal is that once I get my performance degree in 2024, I would like to start applying from a master's as a conductor, because they'll have a lot of the prerequisite classes already taken care of. And so I can do both like perform and conduct in my degree. So it'll be awesome. And it just makes me more versatile as a musician. I'm just kind of lagging a little bit. There we go. So why is music even important? So music, like any art form, is a safe way where humans can express their feelings and emotions. And so we know today there's lots of anxiety, depression, and, surprisingly, a lot of like, suicidal, young people. There was a study shown, this was before COVID, that 35% of all teenagers in America have had suicidal thoughts before. And that's pre-COVID. So now let's look at that like after COVID, you know what I mean? And so, you have these kids that are troubled, and it might not even, and it could be caused for different reasons, might be something going on at home or something going on at school. And then, but music is a way where they can kind of like get their mind off of that. And they can just kind of, focus on, and take in the art that they're doing. And so it's just a way where they can communicate, and that they can, share something, they can have something. And music is consumed every day. Like I said before, it's in movies, video games, commercials, etc. So it is very important that we have music, and not just music, but music education, and especially in our public schools. And like I said before, with the anxiety and depression statistics, I'm this isn't a set statistic, but I would take a wild guess and say that if we were to have a designated music program for every public school system, those numbers of anxiety and depression would go down. just because they're getting their mind off it and they're able to express those emotions. And so just really quickly, the picture, I know probably some of you guys are like wondering, okay, what's Luke Skywalker and Superman and ET and this weird old man in the middle doing? That weird old man in the middle, his name is John Williams. He is actually the composer for all of those movies. So he composed, the Imperial March in Star Wars, the Superman March in Star Wars, the Indiana Jones music. All of that was composed and written by that guy right there. And so, and he is a very, very, very wealthy man. And so if anybody tells you you can't make any money with music, yes, you can. And John Williams can attest to that. And that kind of concludes the presentation. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we're going to open up for some open Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away.
Yeah, and feel free to also use the chat to ask questions.
Oh yeah, use the chat too.
Pass it on. But first of all, let's thank Will for that presentation. I thought it was really cool, not gonna lie, especially the last part. Talking about John Williams. He's like a big deal in like the music world. Yeah, it really makes sense what Will said, not gonna lie. All right.
Thank you.
First question, anyway, from Audrey Lee. Thank you for your presentation. What do you think about soloists as being a soloist as a career?
Ooh, that is a very, very good question, Audrey. Being a soloist is probably the most difficult career path as a musician you can take. At least I'm a little bit biased because I play the bass. Bass, it really isn't. There is solo repertoire, but it's really not meant as a solo instrument. But actually, Audrey, if I can ask you, what instrument do you play?
Yeah, sure. I play the flute.
You play the flute, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's lots of famous flute soloists, and there's lots of concerto competitions where flautists have won. And some advice I would give is just to practice and just know that, I know this is very cliche, but just know that there is going to be somebody that is better than you. And so you have to work at it. You have to just kind of just keep grinding. And another thing I would say is that it can be very, I guess it can add up to your ego if you're not careful. Because what can happen is that you can practice so much and you can win, and you can be really good, and you can win all these concerto competitions at your school or your local community orchestra or whatever, and it attacks here. And so what happens is you kind of lose your humanity in a way, because of all this kind of like press and buzz you're getting from all of this. So I would just say to be careful, do your best. You're probably gonna lose an audition or two sometimes. It's gonna happen. It's happened to me. But I would just say to just keep going. And if you really want, and this is not just for music, but for anything, if you really, really want it, if you work for it like consistently, you're eventually gonna get it. And so that's what I would say in regards to that. Thank you for your question, Audrey.
Okay, thank you.
All right, another question from Victor Wang. What should be your backup plan if music doesn't work out?
Backup plan. I've asked myself this question way too many times, Victor. Yeah, so what's cool, like I mentioned before, with music, there's different careers you can take. So like I said, conducting is one of the biggest things I would like to do, aside from playing. But let's just say, hypothetically speaking, that none of my music stuff works out. What I would do, honestly, at least for me personally, I kind of want to go into sales. Just a fun fact about me, for a whole year, I worked at like this shoe store, and this shoe store wasn't like a Champs or like a Finish Line or anything like that. It was more kind of like we had to be educated on the products, and so we would have to know like facts about the products that we're selling. And so it was more sale oriented rather than like, people buying shoes for like looks, you know what I mean? And so actually sales is one of the biggest most sought after skills that you could have. And not just that, but I mean, a lot of people nowadays, there's technology. People can build Instagram accounts, people can build YouTube accounts, graphic design. And that's something that a lot of people do just like as, in their free time. So whatever your hobby is, whatever you like to do, try to work at that if you can, if music isn't working out. And who knows, you can make a living off of it. But yeah, that's my answer. Thank you, Victor.
All right, now from Victoria, if you don't think that you will major in music in university, what kind of music things could you also still do? And also imagine music is not
Yes.
existing.
Yes. So in regards to that, I forgot to put this, actually, I was going to talk about this, but I forgot to put this in the slides. Actually, I did kind of glance over it briefly. But what's so cool about music is that you can just do it as a hobby. So like, hold on. Excuse me. Let me drink some water. Thank you. So what a lot of times what you're able to do is some schools will actually have orchestras within the schools that anybody can join. So for instance, FSU, they have they have like their freshman orchestra, then they have their like big symphonic orchestra you can audition for, and then there's a third orchestra which is actually open to anybody. You can be a freshman, you can be a senior, you can be a master's student, you can be anywhere in between, and you don't even have to be um, majoring in any music. If you're good enough, you can audition on your instrument, and then you can play in the orchestra. And so you don't necessarily need to have you don't need to have to be studying music. There's different ways where you can practice and do music other than doing it professionally. Also, at least within my local, in the 561 West Palm Beach area, we have local music camps that that need volunteers. And so you can be a private teacher for like a couple months at a local camp, or you can play like I said, you can play like maybe in like a church orchestra, or if you go to like one of those bigger ones, if you play like guitar or drums or something like that, or keys, you can play at the band at church, or I'm sure there's, regardless of what religion, there's probably some sort of musical worship involved, and you could probably do that. And so there's lots of ways that you can get involved in music without necessarily having a degree in music. So yeah, that's my answer.
All right, so two sort of related questions here from Nolan first. What are your thoughts about doing a minor in music alongside a different major in college? And Austin asks, for colleges that have it, what benefits would a double major in music bring that a minor doesn't have? So double major over minor.
Yes. Okay. So with a minor, you would still have, it's more of a certification. I'm sure you could still, you could still teach and you could still freelance and do all that stuff. But you're basically it's kind of that midway between, I don't want to have a degree, but at the same time, I love music. And so a lot of these times people will get minors just so that they can study and practice and do their craft in college. Some might go into maybe like a local orchestra. That's another option I forgot to mention. You could play in a local orchestra, like an amateur orchestra with your friends, or you can make one even. Or some they just get their minor in music and then they might not do anything for it for a couple years, but they'll still practice, and just because they love their craft. And so there's nothing necessarily like wrong with the minor. It's just an option. And so I know a lot of like scientists and physicists and theologians, a lot of the best ones are actually musicians. Like Albert Einstein, he played the violin. And one of his I think it was one of his like autobiographies. He mentioned like him loving the sound of his violin when he plays Bach. And so there is no, you don't necessarily need to major. You can minor, and then you could still have a kind of like a side career in music. And then also, can you ask the second question again, Jamin?
Yeah, so Austin said, for colleges that offer a double major in music, what are the benefits of double majoring in music that minoring in music doesn't have? Like maybe a major and a minor in music, or a double major in music.
When you mean double major, do you mean like having 2 degrees in music, or having like 1 degree in music and another degree in something else? I'm asking Austin.
One in music, one in another.
Okay. So so if you have 1 degree, I mean, it just allows you to be more versatile, like as a person. And you don't have to, like I said before, you don't have to do music as a career, but you can still love music and you can still do it as a hobby. Or you can, if you want to have a degree and let's say psychology or something, but if you want to be a musician but you're still interested in psychology, you're still, a lot of schools are able to do that. I don't know any like off the top of my head, just because I go to Lynn, so I know we don't really have anything like that, but I'm positive a lot of schools do have that option. And so being able to just basically, the benefit of it is you're able to be more versatile, and you're also just studying what you love. A lot of people are kind of, they think that college is just, okay, I have to study one thing, and that one thing is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. No, you don't have to study, you can college for 4 years. You can have a double major. You can, or once you finish 1 degree, if you're really brave enough and you have the money, you can go ahead and study and get a degree in something completely different if you want to. And so, yeah, you just follow your passion, follow your interests. If you want to do a minor or double in music, great. There is no shame in a minor. Like I said before, there's lots of ways you can incorporate music in your life without having like a set degree for it. So thank you for your questions, Nolan and Austin.
All right, from Audrey again, before applying, did you set up any trial lessons with any professors? And if so, were they helpful in guiding your decision on what schools to apply to?
Absolutely, Audrey. Yes. And Audrey, can I ask again, what grade are you in right now?
I'm an upcoming senior.
You're an upcoming senior. Okay, awesome. So I would suggest either anybody who's in that like kind of age group, like incoming senior, incoming junior, especially go to the schools, or go to the websites rather of the schools you want to go to, find the faculty section, and then go find your teacher, and schedule a trial lesson with them. And this is really important because, sorry, my power just cut out for a second. That was kind of scary. But yeah, go schedule a trial lesson with them, because what that does is it's a trial lesson. You'll get to see who you're going to be studying with for the next 4 years, 6 years if you're getting a master's. So it's really important, not just for you to know your professor, but also for your professor to know you. And music is all about connections. And so even if you like a certain professor, and for whatever reason you end up not going to that school that professor teaches in, you can still have that professor as as an associate, as like a colleague, and say, hey, I'm in the area, say I'm assuming all of you guys are in Florida, right? So let's say you go to the flute professor down in the Frost School of Music in Miami, but then you end up going to like FSU for music. So if you're visiting Miami for like a couple of weeks, you can contact your professor, say, hey, or the flute professor, hey, Is there any gigs around? And then they can help you out. They can help you find gigs. If you need like any kind of instrument repairs, they can tell you who the right, I guess, luthiers are in the area. And so there's lots of benefits. And also just it really does. Let me tell you something about the audition process. When it comes down to it, realistically, a solid maybe 30% is based off of your relationship with the professor. It's because you got to remember, this isn't a professional orchestra you're auditioning for, right? You're auditioning for a school. And so what a lot of schools have to take into account is they have to get different actually levels. So they have to accept, people of the highest quality. Most of the time, these will be public schools, not really private. Private can kind of do what they want, but for public schools, they'll probably have maybe a solid, 50% is of the top quality from their audition pool, and then maybe another 25% is of like, in between, like they're really good musicians. They might have messed up a couple notes on their audition, but they're really, really, really good. And then, maybe that's 25 good musicians. They might have been really nervous at the audition, but when you talk to them, they have the passion for music and they really want to do it. And so that's what kind of goes into the decision process. And so if you can build that relationship with your professor, please, by all means, do it. It's going to help you not just in your educational career, but also in your professional career as well. If you can build that relationships, they can help you get gigs and orchestra auditions and whatnot. So that is a very good question, Audrey. Thank you.
Thank you.
And actually, Will, a question from me.
Oh.
Based on your presentation, you mentioned something about the difference between high school, middle school, and conservatory, like orchestra. And then that made me realize, like, even during my time in Dreyfoos, I've never really been in a group of musicians who really all like had the drive. So what was the like biggest difference that you noticed leaving Dreyfoos and entering a conservatory with like real musicians, let's put it that way?
Very good question, Jamin. Biggest difference, work ethic. It's definitely the work ethic because, like I said before, these kids, and it's not even like their fault. A lot of kids, especially like at Dreyfoos, like I know like some of my colleagues, they didn't even want to go. It's just like their parents forced them to, and it's sad because it's not even their fault. They had no choice. They had no say in that. But man, once you actually enter, because when you get to college, it's not professional. It's obviously not professional, but you're treated as professionals, and you're expected to act as such. And so when you're in that environment, man, everybody is so passionate, and everybody is just always wanting to get better, and everybody's so encouraging as well. At Lynn, there's a studio. At least just finishing my freshman year, there's 5 people in the bass section, including myself. So we had a really tight knit group. We have a group chat, and we're always like, giving each other tips and encouraging others. You can have that experience in high school, but it's harder to find. So, and if you're looking for that, kind of like more tight knit, like musical experience where it's like you want to be pushed, man, I would say just find those, Jamin, you know who they are. Find those really, talented musicians, those dedicated people, and, talk to them and, try to, hey, you want to play this piece with me? Hey, want to form a chamber group and see the results, see what happens to your playing ability. There is a quote, I don't know who it is, might be anonymous, but it's you are the average of all your friends. And so if you're hanging around people that don't really care and that are, they're putting in the bare minimum, you may not turn into that power. That's going to be influenced upon you. And so you're not going to be reaching, you're not going to be maxing out your potential compared to if you're surrounded by a group of people that want to get better and that have the passion and that have the drive. when you compare yourself to the same person in those two different groups, you're going to realize that the person that is surrounded by people that actually want to get better and are pushing you to the limit, that person's going to be a lot better, musically speaking.
Obviously.
So yeah, work ethic is probably the biggest thing.
I see. That's really cool. All right, seeing as there appear to be no more questions in the chat, we are nearing our 8 o'clock closing time. So unless anyone has any more last minute questions, feel free to ask them now, but otherwise we can end this webinar maybe 5 minutes early, if everyone's okay with that.
Hey, wait, hold on. I want to see how many people. 21 people. Wow. Thank you guys for showing up. I really do appreciate it.
Big showing here.
Yeah. It was a lot bigger than our 7-person, like 5:55 crowd. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have like 6 people in the chat. But then like the whole 21
man,
of
they're
you.
all here to see you, man.
Oh, thank you guys. Thank you guys. And it's a really beautiful organization that you guys are a part of. So it's really awesome the work that you guys are doing. So when Jamin presented the opportunity, I was like, I'm gonna do this. So thank you for having me, Jamin.
Oh, no problem. I thought you were a great fit. All right. Well then, yeah, that's it. This is officially the end of the webinar. Thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you, Will, again for your time. We really appreciate it. So that's it, everyone. Thank you for coming. Have a great day and have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.